Today we will discuss on the structure of newspaper. It is benefited for the journalism first year semester 2 students. In this lesson we will discuss about the overview of organization, functions of management, newspaper management and other important departments in the newspapers. Management is a crucial in every organization. Management has been defined as different processes of activities like planning, organizing, controlling. A newspaper is a similar, that kind of management functions is applied to the newspapers also. A newspaper is owned by owners like individual owners, chain or cross media ownership. There is many kinds of ownerships. The newspaper as a social institution with a social responsibility function, generally we calls for a different approach to the management. In this topic, elaborated discussion on this topic we have in the studio Professor K. Stevenson, retired professor, Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Usmania University. Sir, welcome to you for this lesson. Sir, let us discuss about the overview of the organization and structure of a newspaper.
Right. First, let us start with an organization. I think all of us, ever since our birth, have been a part of an organization. You may be born in a hospital, you go to school, which is an organization, you go to college, which is an organization, you go to a university, you travel in different places, transport organization. So, we have to understand that this organization is nothing but a collection of individuals. They are all working towards a common goal. And this organization has a structure. Every organization, if you just look at organizations around you, you have probably a hospital. A hospital has different departments. Right? Now, then there is a structure. Okay, there may be a director of a hospital with various departments under him, each specializing in his own task and performing those tasks. So, we are looking at organization as a collection of individuals working for some predetermined objectives, and you have different groups of people engaging in different groups of activities to achieve this common goal. The same is applicable to a newspaper organization. The objective of a newspaper organization is to bring out a publication on a particular day, which means that various departments in the organization will have to combine, work unitedly and see that the edition is printed late in the night and is circulated early in the morning to its readers. So, if this paper has to come out, we have to also think about what are the various departments which are there in an organization, okay, and what kind of hierarchies are being followed in this organization, so that ultimately you get a newspaper the next day.
what are the functions of management, like planning,
Yeah.
organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling? These are the general functions.
Yeah.
The same, please explain in detail about the each function to our students.
Yeah, you have rightly mentioned, okay, the management principles of planning, organizing, staffing, controlling, directing are equally applicable to a newspaper organization. A newspaper organization has to plan what kind of stories will be published, what kind of prioritization has to take place, what kind of pictures are to be published, what kind of editorial has to be written, what kind of edit articles have to be written. There has to be some planning of pages, not just one page but also different pages, okay, because each page, whether it is a sports page or a business page or an edit page, each page has to have a strong link with the other page. So there is planning of the entire newspaper, okay, which extensive planning which happens in any newspaper organization. It's not just planning. You will have to organize. How do you organize? How do you marshal your manpower resources and allot them work so that they can come back with new stories, come back with pictures, okay, come back with maybe if advertisement executives bringing advertisements, working with ad agencies to get advertisement support. So you will have to organize all these activities, okay, including the activities in the printing shop or the mechanical section where you will have to print. So planning, organizing, then staffing. Staffing is very crucial, okay. This is very frequently referred to by the HR person, where they say machine are very important. So who are these men? Do we have this right kind of manpower? Are they skilled? Okay. Whether are they skilled to execute the task which is being assigned to them? So staffing, how do you allocate duties to these people? Okay, maybe it is a district correspondent. Okay, you may need a district correspondent. You may need stringers. You may need sub-editors. You may need photographers. So how do you staff your people? I think is another major function of newspaper management, just like in any other management. Okay, so planning, organizing, staffing, directing and controlling. You will have to direct the flow of activities, the events which happen in an organization. There cannot be any what you call a slip in coordination. All units in a newspaper organization will have to coordinate efficiently so that no work doesn't stop. There is a smooth functioning of the entire organization only when there is coordination. There is 100% what we call teamwork. So you have to direct your manpower, okay, and control this manpower to ensure that the newspaper is published the following day.
Generally, we call the newspaper management is not a business, that is a service. What kind of social responsibility need to be taken by the newspaper management? Will you explain on this topic?
I think newspaper management is slightly different from managing any other organization which makes, let us say, some products, maybe watches or something. Now, newspapers are considered to be social institutions which are supposed to be informing people, building public opinion, helping them in understanding policies. Okay, so it is actually integrating people and bringing people together so that they have a better understanding of their government and other cultures. So we have this what we call social function, social responsibility function. That's why we say it is a social institution. It cannot be running after profits. Of course, they have to, at the end of the day, make some profits, but profit motive, okay, is something which is being increasingly being followed today. Unlike in the past where newspapers were disseminating information, today newspapers have also turned into what we call as commodities, trying to sell themselves and make profits. But as you said, as you said, management is different here because the product keeps changing every day. Say for example, if you make a watch, okay, if a company makes a watch, a particular brand of watch, now that brand of watch will be there maybe for a year or 2 years. But here what happens is the product is changing. When the product is changing by the day, management has to be far more alert in trying to address these changes. What kind of changes can be made in the organization, in the newspaper, so that it becomes far more appealing to the masses. I think this is what makes newspaper management far more challenging. The third aspect of newspaper management being different is that this newspaper is a perishable commodity. Okay, once it arrives at your doorstep, you read it for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. After that, the life of the newspaper is gone. Okay, it is a perishable commodity. You don't go back. Sometimes you may go back, sometimes you may not go back. But the lifespan of the newspaper is dead after 24 hours. And these days, the time has actually shrunk because of television, because of digital platforms where news is being disseminated into your hand, okay, through your mobile. So in that case, what is happening is the perishable nature of newspaper has become far more conspicuous.
Now discuss about the organization of a newspaper, like editor and sub-editor, other staff members in the desk. Will you explain about the detail about the typical task of the each crew who works for the newspaper?
Before we come to the editorial, let us broadly map what are the various departments which are working in a newspaper organization. Okay. Now, first and foremost, what strikes me is that work begins in the advertisement department, okay, which is supposed to be collecting a lot of advertisements. They'll have to prepare dummies. Okay, they appoint advertising executives who go around getting advertisements for the newspaper. Okay, this is the business side we are talking about. So, advertisement section, then you have what we call as the personnel or HR section, which looks at manpower recruitment, compensation, etc. Then you have the finance department, which looks into the financial health of the organization. You have circulation department, which is basically involved in distribution and promotion of the newspaper. Then we also have the mechanical section, which involves the print shop. Okay, we will come to each of these later. Then we also have the editorial department. So now let us focus on the editorial department. Any newspaper is headed by the publisher, and under the publisher you have the editor, okay, and the editorial department is headed by the editor, who handles news, features, opinions. Okay, the nomenclature may be different: editor-in-chief, chief editor. Okay, but one thing we have to take note of is that you don't have a uniform kind of a structure in all organizations. Different media houses or different newspaper organizations have a different hierarchical structure. The hierarchical structure may also differ depending on whether it is a small newspaper, whether it's a medium newspaper, or it's a large newspaper. Now, depending on the size of the newspaper, okay, and depending on the mindset of the management, the hierarchy of the editorial department can vary. So, generally the editor-in-chief, the editor with the support of his staff, that is the news editor, then the chief sub-editor or sub-editors and reporters, they manage the editorial department. Now, the reporting staff also is included under the editorial department.
Now coming to discuss on the business section like advertising department and circulation department, please explain about the business department.
Advertising, I think, is the mainstay. Okay, it actually helps the newspaper survive. The cost of production of newspapers is very, very high. Okay, so how do you offset the cost of a newspaper? Is through advertisements. Okay, the more the advertising revenue, your newspaper is subsidized. You get a newspaper for 2 rupees or 3 rupees. Why? Because the newspaper is getting revenue from another source, that is your advertisements. Another source of revenue for the newspaper is through sales and subscription, okay, which is actually handled by the circulation department. So these things work in tandem. Okay, the circulation department has to think in terms of how best we can ensure that the newspaper reaches the reader on time. Okay, whether they should engage rail, road, or air to move their products. Okay, when we see some newspapers, if they have to be shifted to or transported to districts, far off districts, they hire cars. So what is the mode of transportation which the paper has to deploy to ensure that the paper reaches the readers? Now they have to appoint hawkers, they have to appoint circulation agents. Okay, they have to make sure that there is a strong network of newspaper boys who can deliver these newspapers. So the circulation department has to keep in touch with all these people located at different places. Okay, now and then make sure that they also collect feedback from these people as to how the paper is being perceived. So circulation department also in a way collects feedback from these hawkers, the newspaper sellers, as to how the paper is, how the reader is responding to the newspaper. We also have to think in terms of circulation department, which is sometimes takes up promotional events, how to promote newspapers. Okay. The other day there was someone from a major newspaper who said he would visit a college, okay, to have an event, okay, to promote his newspaper. Okay. He wanted some subscriptions from the college. Okay. So the college would bear the expenses, or students are asked to pay something extra and they would be delivered a newspaper. So it is a promotion event. So it is basically an effort by the circulation department to boost its sales. So we have to understand this, because revenue from both these sources, from the advertising and circulation, is very, very crucial for the functioning of newspapers. Sometimes some newspaper organizations have both this advertising and circulation under the marketing department. So that's why there is no fixed label with regard to the kind of departments which are there in newspaper organization.
Yeah, another major department is a mechanical department in the newspapers. Generally, we call it is a production department. There is a pre-press and printing, distribution. These activities happens in the production department. Sir, can you explain in detail about the functions of the mechanical departments?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very broad term which I have used here, mechanical department, but basically it is production. Okay, the production department actually takes care of the printing. Okay, depending on the size of the newspaper and the finances they have different kinds of printing machines. Okay, invariably they have color printing machines. Okay, especially rotary. Okay, and they are sheet fed. Okay, which means you have big rolls of newsprint which are mounted onto the machines, and this machines print maybe 60,000, 70,000 copies per hour. Okay, so in fact the deadlines in a newspaper office are set by the mechanical department, because they would like to complete the printing and hand it over to the circulation department much before time, so that the circulation department can transport. So after the pre-press work, which is generally handled by the editorial department, okay, where you design the entire page, and then it is sort of sent to the production department. Okay, earlier there used to be a film making section, then there used to be a plate making section, but all those things are now obsolete. Now what is happening is the entire designed page is sent to the production department, and the technology is computer to plate, that is CTP. Okay, so whatever you design on your computer, it goes onto the plate directly. The plate is mounted onto the rotary, and the printing starts. And this printing department not only just prints, it also cuts the paper to size, makes it into bundles, okay, bundles of 100 or 200, okay, and then there is this packaging section which packages them according to the print order which they have received, and then given to the circulation department. It will be a nice experience if you visit some local newspapers wherever they are available, newspapers and their printing shops. Okay.
Connection with the editorial department, sir. Can you explain the key roles of editor, sub-editor, and other important journalist who works for the newspaper?
Yeah. The editor, okay, as I said, he can go by different names. He leads the newspaper's editorial team. He takes crucial decisions with regard to what are the news stories which have to be published, what kind of pictures are to be published, what should be the positioning of these stories, okay, what should go into which page. I think he is the person who takes decisions. He is accountable for all the text and content which goes into a newspaper. Okay, so he is someone who ensures that there is journalistic integrity, okay, and make sure that the product is well received by the audience. So there is a great responsibility on the editor when it comes to actually bringing out a newspaper, because he has to look at what are the events which are happening across the globe, nationally, locally, what could be of interest to his reader, okay, and how best he can sort of position or display them in his newspaper. Okay, so this is something which becomes very crucial, and it, as I said, because newspapers build public opinion, he is also constantly looking at whether his newspaper is performing this function of informing people, educating people, okay, whether they are the newspaper is building a positive climate, okay, in the minds of people. So it's a great responsibility for the editor to bring out a newspaper. Now under him there can be different layers. There can be deputy editors, okay, newspapers may have, newspapers may not have, but could be deputy editors. But invariably what we see in newspapers is we find a news editor who selects news stories. He assigns tasks to reporters. Okay, sometimes this job is done by the bureau chief. Okay, he finalizes the front page layout, and he also directs what should go into the inside pages. Okay, because each page should stand as a separate entity, but again each page should have an identity, okay, and should be strong enough. A page cannot be a weak link in the entire package of a newspaper. Then below the news editor you will have a chief sub-editor, okay, a chief sub-editor who actually controls the edition for that particular evening or that particular morning. So the chief sub-editor is assisted by senior sub-editors, and senior sub-editors followed by sub-editors. Now this entire team edits articles, writes headlines, okay, they make sure that there are no grammatical mistakes, okay, and they make sure that the paper's credibility is intact. They decide about what kind of pictures, illustrations, cartoons which have to be taken. Okay, so the chief sub-editor generally assigns a page to different sub-editor, and the sub-editor is supposed to work on that particular page. There can be a sub-editor who is working on the district edition, district page. Okay, so district page, the person is responsible to give only district news coming from different places. Likewise, if it is a city page, so the city page in charge has to collect or edit news stories which are pertinent or to the city as such. So regional, local, okay, national news, okay, is again segregated, and this team of people, that is the senior sub-editors, chief sub-editor, they are constantly working on these pages. Okay, now earlier there used to be designers in newspapers, but these days the sub-editors themselves are designing the pages. But some newspapers still have this practice of having what we call as graphic designers who are specialists in designing. Okay, so we see sub-editors playing a double role here, where they are not only editing but also making pages. In case of business pages and sports pages, the reporter becomes a sub-editor, he also becomes a designer. Okay, so we see a lot of workload on people working on the business pages, because they are, trying to execute 2 or 3 different tasks at the same time. So these sub-editors, okay, they hold the key to the text which is being published. Then on the other hand, we have under the editorial department, we have the bureau, the reporting bureau, which is headed by a bureau chief, and the nomenclature again can change from organization to organization. And this bureau chief, he is responsible to marshal his team, okay, to go and gather news from various sources and ensure that there is accuracy and fairness in the reporting, ensure that there is objectivity in reporting. He also assigns different beats to each of these reporters who fan out to different parts of the city or the state. He closely coordinates with all the district correspondents, okay, trying to bring in news report from different districts. The chief bureau is constantly in touch with the editorial department and alerts them about any major development which is happening across the state, and tell them that, look, I think this is a story which is coming up, we have to be prepared to allot some space for it. So the bureau chief acts as a very effective coordination with the editorial department.
Under this topic, here we need to know about the ownership of newspapers, like individual, chain, partnership. Along with these points, please summarize the entire unit.
When we look at ownership patterns, newspaper ownership patterns in India, there are newspapers which are owned by individuals. There are chain newspapers like the Times of India. Okay, there are newspapers which are owned by trust like the Tribune. Okay, then there are ownership newspapers which have a cross media ownership, which means that the owner is not just into newspapers but also is into other media. Okay, it can be publishing, it can be television, with cross media ownership. Then there can be conglomerate ownership, that is that the ownership has several businesses and newspaper is one among them. Okay, so you have different types of ownerships in India. Coming back to summary, I think we started off with a general discussion on how we are a part of an organization, and organizations have their own structures, and the structure is important so that they can manage, and the principles of management of planning, organizing, directing, staffing and controlling. I think after that we discussed very broadly what are the various departments in the newspaper, that is the mechanical, the business, that business which includes advertising, circulation. Then we talked about editorial department, the print department or the mechanical department, and also other departments like finance, administration, HR, okay, which are again crucial to the functioning of the organization. And one thing which we will have to remember is that there has to be total coordination, absolute coordination between all these departments so that the newspaper is published. Okay. So, no one department can say we are more important than the other. Each plays its own role. Okay. The circulation department just cannot say paper cannot survive because of us. Editorial department cannot say that it is because of us the paper is surviving. No, I think each department has its own role. Okay, they contribute to the successful printing of the newspaper. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.